Clara Brown, 1997 National Cowgirl Hall of Fame honoree. Born into slavery at the turn of the century, Clara Brown knew hardship and pain. When she was 3, Clara and her mother were sold at auction, separating them from the rest of their family. When Clara was 16, she married a young carpenter her owner Ambrose Smith had purchased. The couple had 4 children, Richard, Margaret, and twins Eliza Jane and Paulina Ann. In 1835, Clara experienced for the second time in her life having her happy family literally torn apart. Ambrose Smith died, and his property was sold at auction, going to several owners. Clara was purchased by George Brown, a hatter from Russellville, Kentucky. Clara adopted the Brown surname and was held in such esteem by George Brown's daughters that with their father's death in 1857, they took action to ensure that she would never be sold to others. Clutching her precious freedom papers, Clara headed west to St. Louis, where she became a cook, but not for long. Hearing some mountain men discuss the latest gold strikes in Colorado, she asked if they could use someone to cook and wash for them. At the age of 59, Clara found herself in a caravan of 30 wagons, slowly making their way across the plains to Denver. She was one of 6 women, and the only black to make the trip. Since the wagons were needed for provisions and supplies, Brown and the other travelers walked the almost 600-mile trip. In Central City, Clara opened a laundry, served as a nurse, and organized the first Sunday school. 7 years later, despite the fact that she never refused to help anyone in need, Clara had earned and saved $10,000, including investments in mining camps and property. However, Clara Brown's real goal was not to amass a fortune, but to reunite her family. After the Civil War, she traveled back east to try to find her son and daughters. Her search was in vain, but she did locate 34 relatives, purchased a wagon train, and brought them across the plains to Colorado. It was only the first of many black wagon trains Clara would sponsor. Back in Colorado, Clara battled the adverse circumstances common to many pioneers. Floodwaters destroyed the houses she owned in Denver. In 1873, a fire destroyed 3 of her Central City properties, and the next year, her home. These losses, combined with her generosity to others and the money spent searching for her family, reduced Clara to poverty. In 1880, Clara moved to Denver to occupy a small cabin donated for her use. But at this low point in her life, one of Clara's happiest events occurred. After a lifetime of being separated, she finally found her daughter, Eliza Jane, living in Iowa. Clara's community raised funds for her to travel to Iowa, and mother and daughter were reunited after 47 years. Clara was buried with honors by the Society of Colorado Pioneers, which made her its first female member. Since her death, she has been honored by the people of Colorado in many ways, including a memorial chair in the Central City Opera House. In 1977, Clara's portrait was unveiled in a stained glass window in the chambers of the Colorado Supreme Court. As part of the state capitol building, it is a fitting tribute to a true pioneer.
Molly Taylor Stevenson Sr. and Molly Taylor Stevenson Jr., 2001 National Cowgirl Hall of Fame honorees. The land. It's always been the land. The Taylor Stevenson Ranch, which sits square within the city limits of Houston. For 150 years, this has been a working ranch, one of the oldest black-owned ranches in the United States. But what makes the Taylor Stevenson Ranch so remarkable are the stories of the women whose grit and determination have held it close and safe these many years. The story has its beginnings in 1856, when Ann Taylor was purchased as a slave by Edward Willis Taylor. Skilled in medicinal herbs, she successfully nursed her new owner's son, E.R., back to health. Patient and nurse fell in love, but unable to marry because of the laws of the time, they lived together, raising and educating 6 children. Ann and E.R.'s granddaughter, Molly Taylor Stevenson Sr., was born in 1911. She grew up handling all the regular ranch chores, but she loved riding herd on the 3-day cattle drives to Freeport. She graduated from Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee, because there were no schools in her home state that admitted young black women seeking degrees in music. During her time at Fisk University, Molly Sr. met and later married Benjamin Stevenson Sr. When E.R. died in 1929, relatives, both white and black, descended to lay claim to the oil-rich land. Molly Sr., taking on all challengers, in and out of court, struggled and succeeded in preserving her birthright for her descendants. The Stevensons' generosity extended well beyond their family into their community. The ranch has been a haven for black children who in the days of segregation were barred from all but one of the city's parks. Many of these children were educated right along with the Stevensons' kids, Barbara, Sandra, Ben Tay, Benjamin Jr., Molly Jr., and Major, with Molly Sr. and Benjamin often paying for entire college educations. When Molly Jr. came along, she just naturally picked right up on this ranch business. Striking and statuesque, she studied business at Texas Southern University, then spent a few years as a professional model. But the land brought her home, and she's worked ever since to preserve her family's legacy. In 1994, Molly Jr. and Alicia Scott Jr. were married on the Taylor Stevenson Ranch. She founded the nonprofit American Cowboy Museum in 1987 to honor the contributions to Western culture of African Americans, Hispanics, Native Americans, and women. She works tirelessly to introduce new generations to this often overlooked history. Molly Jr. is a role model to young black men and women, speaking to them through radio and television shows and in magazine and newspaper articles. The two Mollys are members of the International Brangus Breeders Association, the Texas and Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association, and the American Quarter Horse Association. Recently, mother and daughter were grand marshals at the Cowboys of Color Rodeo in Houston. Like her mother, Molly Jr. loves to ride and is a member of several trail riding groups. She's also actively involved with the Landowners of Texas, the Speakers and Black Go Texan Committee of the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo, and the Professional Black Cowboy and Cowgirl Association, which has honored Molly Sr. as a living legend. Edward Willis Taylor had no idea what he was setting in motion when he brought that young woman home to nurse his son. Ann Taylor founded a dynasty based on the land she and E.R. loved. She would be proud of Molly Stevenson Sr. and Molly Stevenson Jr., and of their commitment to the land and dedication to their community.
2015 Cowgirl Hall of Fame honoree Patricia E. Kelly. For over 30 years at the helm of the nonprofit organization Ebony Horsewomen Incorporated, Patricia E. Kelly has used the relationship between humans and horses to positively impact the lives of hundreds of children within her community. But her love of horses started much earlier. A native of Hartford, Connecticut, Kelly watched Roy Rogers and Trigger galloping to the rescue on her television. She finally learned how to ride on a neighbor's horse when she was 9, developing a lifelong passion for it. Kelly enlisted in the U.S. Marines right out of high school, serving her country during the Vietnam War. She made her way back home to Hartford and wanted to reconnect with her love of riding. Along with her daughter Heather, she began Ebony Horsewomen in 1984 as a cultural and social enrichment organization for female equestrians. Using her own money, Kelly purchased 4 horses and began teaching women and children how to ride for free. Over the years, many of her riders have been featured in parades, rodeos, and other events in celebration of black equestrians. Upon witnessing the toll that drugs and violence took on her community, Kelly restructured Ebony Horsewomen in 1987 to empower the youth that had been affected by these obstacles. It became an equestrian and agricultural center located in Hartford's 693-acre Kenny Park, offering a safe place for the mentorship and personal development of children aged 5 to 19. Using horses as the hook, Kelly created a variety of motivational programs that generate pride and healing for these kids. One such program, called Horse Sense, brings horses, educators, and doctors into Hartford's most underserved schools, housing projects, and neighborhoods. It has won several civic and community awards for cultivating self-esteem and academic achievement while providing anti-drug and alcohol education. Kelly has now been a trained equestrian instructor for over 37 years, as well as a certified master urban riding instructor and equine husbandry instructor. She also holds a certification in equine assisted growth, learning, and therapy as a horse specialist from the Equine Assisted Growth and Learning Association. Her organization serves over 300 youth annually and boasts a 100% high school graduation rate among the participants, along with an 84% college acceptance rate. Kelly has been recognized for her trailblazing efforts multiple times, most currently as one of CNN's top 10 heroes for 2014 and as one of Aetna's 2015 champions for change. Kelly regularly gives workshops and speaks about youth mentorship, effective leadership, mental health, and the importance of equine therapy, youth employment programs, and education in the inner city neighborhoods. She has been featured on the Queen Latifah Show and the Dr. Oz Show. For her gift of empowerment to future generations through the care and enjoyment of horses, the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame is honored to induct Patricia E. Kelly.
2019 Cowgirl Hall of Fame honoree, Maisha Akbar. Horsemanship is not what first comes to mind when considering Compton, California. But this city, long afflicted with gang violence, harbors a haven for children in the form of an after-school program. Maisha Akbar founded and ran the nonprofit Compton Junior Posse Youth Equestrian Program for 30 years. Through horses, hard work, and a safe space to learn, the organization helped thousands of kids discover opportunities beyond a gang and drug-filled existence. Maisha Akbar was raised in the government housing projects of a partially rural area of Los Angeles. Growing up around animals, especially horses, was always special to her. She moved to a little-known agricultural area of Compton known as Richland Farms, so her 3 children could grow up living a more rural lifestyle, caring for and riding horses. The neighborhood kids were attracted to their horses like magnets. Maisha saw that they often came from difficult circumstances, and she provided them a place to visit, food to eat, clothing to wear, and the love of family. As more children showed up, Maisha made them work to be able to ride. They cleaned stalls and cared for the horses. Officially a nonprofit in 1988, she named her after-school program the Compton Junior Posse, teaching more than 1,500 kids each year to ride and compete in equestrian competitions on rescued and rehabilitated horses. Akbar knew a good education would further their opportunities, so she required all students to submit their report cards and established a tutoring center on the grounds to help keep up grades. Many opportunities were offered to youth through the program, including training and apprenticeships with international trainers, including Olympic gold medalists such as Will Simpson. One initiative, the Junior Ranger Program, was a collaboration with local nature conservancies to provide training as park rangers. The students were then invited to the annual World Ranger Congress in Tanzania and Korea. Many have been inspired and impassioned by Maisha Akbar's work. Her board worked tirelessly to fund the organization. It attracted much media attention, including from CNN World News and Good Morning America. Akbar's work has been recognized through many accolades, including as a 2001 California Legislature Woman of the Year and one of Essence Magazine's 25 Most Inspirational Women of 2007. Paying it forward, one group of Maisha's former students went on to form the Compton Cowboys. They work as ambassadors in their neighborhoods to help eradicate some of the negative stigmas of their city and to honor the history of the African American cowboy tradition. When Akbar retired at the end of 2018, the group picked up the reins at the Compton Junior Posse, renaming it the Compton Junior Equestrians. They serve as riding coaches, stable managers, and enrichment instructors. The center continues to overflow with students eager to embrace the same opportunities that the Compton Cowboys received from Maisha. Akbar changed the lives of a generation in the city of Compton. a generation that is carrying on her legacy of compassion, hard, honest work, and giving back to the community. For her extraordinary work on behalf of children, we are thrilled to induct Maisha Akbar into the National Cowgirl Hall of Fame.